I'm Michelle Grant from New England Public Media. The backing we get from our community makes up almost 90% of our annual budget, including generous support from local businesses. I love our corporate sponsors. Next time you're doing business with a New England Public Media supporter, please thank them. They're a big part of how we can bring you insightful, objective, and necessary information in these uncertain times.
Expand your reach. Become a New England Public Media sponsor. Email sponsorship@nepm.org.
You're watching New England Public Media, WGBY Springfield.
Behold, the world's foremost all-male comic ballet company, Les Ballets Trocadero di Monte Carlo.
Why not men in tutus? Ballet can stand a little parody.
We're going to be fun, and people are going to love us, and we're gay.
Meet these acclaimed ballerina boys on American Masters.
Tune in or stream Ballerina Boys, June 4th on NEPM.
Coming up, stories we're connecting you with tonight. We go behind the bench of two local craftsmen who create works of art that you can wear.
All day long, meticulous detail that goes into their designs can sometimes take up more noise than the conversation.
As we come out of the pandemic, what lies ahead for the future of the Big E?
The economic impact of the Eastern States Exposition is over $681 million. And there's a lot of livelihoods at stake.
And even if you prefer sticking to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to, springtime is a great time for chasing waterfalls.
Taking the right off the stairs, we can see the 60-foot angular drop of Parker Brook Falls. If this were the 4th of July, though, these falls would be the build-up to the grand finale.
Details on those stories and more up next on Connecting Point.
Support for Connecting Point is provided by our contributing viewers.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us for Connecting Point. I'm 𝗖𝗍𝗍 𝗏𝗏. A local institution, MurDuff's Jewelry, is celebrating 75 years in business this year. The name MurDuff comes from its founders, Rita Murphy and Ed Duffy, who opened the store in the Northampton village of Florence in 1946. Their legacy carries on through today as the business remains a destination for some of the most unique and historic custom jewelry designs in the country, led by two masters of their craft. Connecting Point's Ross Lipman takes us behind the bench of Kurt Brazeau and Paul Piquette to see what it takes to be a master goldsmith and a master engraver.
The counters at MurDuff's Jewelers in Florence carry the same shine as most jewelry stores, with watches and rings that can certainly catch your eye. But if you take a moment and look above the counters, something else might get your attention.
That's perfect.
Two master craftsmen, hard at work, as they have been side by side for over 20 years.
All day long, it's constant controlled chaos.
MurDuff's owner Kurt Brazeau and Paul Piquette make quite the pair in the jewelry world. Their combined decades of experience have earned each of them distinct titles, respectively, of Master Goldsmith and Master Engraver.
I think it's more something that people look up to you about, not just an engraver. An engraver could be somebody who runs a machine. So a master engraver really denotes a higher level of skill.
To be a master goldsmith means that you can have any project put in front of you and you can do it.
The small hallway in the back of the store serves as their work benches. All day long, meticulous detail that goes into their designs can sometimes take up more noise than the conversation.
Normally now we'd be talking about what we brought for lunch and who had the better lunch.
Consider it the comfortable kind of silence from two friends turned co-workers whose relationship has only grown over the years.
Our personalities are very much the same. We enjoy a lot of the same things. We've actually gone on vacation together fishing, even though we work together all the time.
Together, they've made a reputation nationally for their work, from PGA trophies like the Travelers Cup to custom one-of-a-kind antique designs like this ring with a sapphire portrait, Their combined skills allow the pair to take on some of the most unique challenges, including in 2015, when Paul Piquette was asked to follow up the work of another Paul.
Well, working here at MurDuff's, the most exciting piece, and probably will forever, is doing the time capsule silver plate that went into the cornerstone at the Massachusetts State House. It was engraved in the same style that Paul Revere did the first plate back in 1795. And so the fact that his tools and we could actually swap shops and still be comfortable.
But not every day is filled with projects that call back to the American Revolution. Sometimes you're just making a silver cup for a boy named Finn.
And then when I got introduced to engraving, I'm like, wow, this is cool.
What keeps Piquette and Brazeau on the bench is that every piece can be one of a kind. That is, if you are a master at your craft.
Now, the best part of my business is making one-of-a-kind jewelry for customers. That's what we excel at, and that's what I enjoy doing.
For those that are younger, looking to get into the arts, don't skip over the trades. There's a lot. If you're creative, there's much that you can do as a tradesperson, and be creative with it.
For the first time since its 10-year celebration in 2018, the Mass Poetry Festival returns this week with a virtual event. The 4-day festival runs from May 13th through May 16th and will showcase poets from across Massachusetts and the country, as well as including over 50 events for attendees to participate in. I spoke with MP Carver, the festival director, and Crystal Valentine, the festival manager, to learn more about the event and how poetry, one of this region's most famous art forms, can be so powerful.
The festival actually began in 2008 in Lowell. Mass Poetry was an organization founded by Michael Ansara, and part of its mission was to bring poetry into public spaces and also to create a market and space for poetry where poets would get paid. That's one important aspect of the festival. All the poets who perform for us or share their work, everybody is compensated. Of course, not as much as we would like and as they deserve, but I think in this world, sometimes I think people think that maybe poetry, unlike other arts, is something that maybe doesn't have as much value. And so part of Mass Poetry's mission is about changing that as much as it is about bringing poetry, into public spaces and into the world.
Now, this biennial event is already underway and is featuring over 100 poets and including more than 50 events over the span of 4 days. What can attendees expect at this year's festival?
So we have a lot of amazing events, and honestly, we have events for all types of poetry lovers. I'll first like to highlight some of our headliners. So we have headliners such as Khadijah Queen and Martina Spada. We have Naomi Shihab-Nye. We have, I think it's about 8 headliners. So the list can go on and on and on, and that's just to name a few. And the headliners will actually be happening every single night. So if you miss one of the headliners, no worries. You can definitely come by and come back and see some more headliners.
Now, MP, before joining the festival team as director, you have been a longtime supporter of Mass Poetry through participating in workshops, volunteering, fundraising, and more. What impact has the festival had on you personally and in the work that you do as a poet and visual artist?
More than I can say, honestly. As a young poet, alone in Salem, I just happened, the first year the festival was in Salem, I just happened to see the sign. And at that time, I knew in my life that poetry was what I wanted to do and what I loved. But I really didn't have any community of poets around me. I didn't study poetry in college. I took a couple workshops, but it wasn't my major, and so I really didn't have a lot of connections or or a community around me. And so that's really, the festival is really what gave me that, and what sort of where I built a lot of the relationships that have been really vital to me in my life. The Salem community is unbelievable, and it's how I ended up going back for my master's degree and getting tied in with all sorts of opportunities, as well as being able to build my own art, and I guess having the heart to continue on as an artist, which is not easy to do alone. So.
And Crystal, you are a nationally and internationally acclaimed poet who has received numerous recognitions, including being the former New York City Youth Poet Laureate. In your bio, you state that you are a generator and fierce protector of Black joy. As our country faces a national reckoning around social and racial justice, how can poetry make a difference during these times?
For me, poetry was always kind of like a community gathering kind of thing. So I did a lot of slam as a high schooler, and we always centered poetry and community. So when I do my poems, I'm always thinking about my community, making sure that they feel included, making sure that they feel seen. And it's just a great way to just bring people together. And even, through poetry, even if you have like contrasting ideas or contrasting opinions, by literally listening to a poem, you will just see a different kind of view from someone else that you might not have thought to listen to otherwise.
New England is well known for producing many famous poets, writers, and authors, including Emily Dickinson, Henry David Thoreau, and Nathaniel Hawthorne, just to name a few. Why do you think that this region is so influential, and how do you plan on honoring the rich history and legacy in poetry in this year's festival?
The rich history here really keeps coming forward into the present. There's so many wonderful poets and writers here who I think are so open and who are so willing to sort of help the next generation of poetry. And then also to try and share poetry through not just events like the festival, but writer series and open mics are happening here all the time. Even in the middle of the pandemic, there were some times when in this area, you could have gone, from your own living room, you could have been at an event every single night. In terms of the festival, this year is, I think, one of the more international years. One of the few advantages of our current situation is that we can bring people here when maybe in other years we wouldn't be able to afford to fly so many people from other states, or we'd have to worry about a different level of logistics costs. But three of our amazing headliners are Massachusetts poets. Martine Espada and 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗃 are both from UMass Amherst, amazing poets. And Ariana Rines is actually is a local poet as well, originally from Massachusetts. And in addition to a number of amazing events.
And I know that one of the events that is also going to be featured is a virtual poetry walk for Emily Dickinson. Talk to me a little bit about that event.
It's going to be a kind of a virtual tour, just going through some of her artifacts, and people from really anywhere will be able to kind of attend. So I think that it's also really great that we also are moving forward, right, with our new generation of poets, but also not forgetting kind of like the foundation of where specifically Massachusetts poetry comes from.
For people who might not feel like poetry is for them, or who might not know much about it, what would you like to tell them about the art form, and why should they give it a chance?
Poetry can really be for absolutely anybody. The thing that we have in common is that we kind of communicate with each other through a medium of language, right? No matter what language you speak, and that's how we kind of communicate. So if you kind of communicate through that, that's basically the grounds of poetry.
Every Friday night, Connecting Point explores the creativity, culture, and community that makes us Western New England. But it doesn't stop there. You can find us online anytime for exclusive features and content. In our digital exclusive this week, we're celebrating the Mass Poetry Festival with the work of acclaimed local poet Martine Espada, who is participating in the festival. drawing upon both a personal encounter he had with a cab driver in Boston and the story of the notorious murder case of Chuck Stewart, a Bostonian who murdered his wife, blamed it on a made-up black carjacker, and almost got away with it. 𝗬𝗲𝗂𝗃 tackles issues of race by, in his own words, framing the present through the lens of the past. Martín reads his poem Jumping Off the Mystic Tobin Bridge for us.
It was exactly 5 p.m. and we were stuck in traffic in a taxi on the Mystic Tobin Bridge. The driver stammered his own West Side story without the ballet, how a Puerto Rican gang stole his cousin's wallet years ago. "You think I'm going to rob you?" I said, in my suit and tie, close enough now to tickle his ear with the mouth of a revolver.
Don't miss this digital exclusive available online right now at nepm.org/connectingpoint. With spring in full swing and summer just around the corner, there's no better time for exploring the outdoors and connecting with nature, especially when you want to go chasing waterfalls. With this thought in mind, Connecting Point's Brian Sullivan ventured out to the northern Berkshires to get a glimpse of Tannery Falls in all of its springtime glory. His journey took him on some unexpected twists and turns through the Savoy Mountain State Forest, but somehow he found his way out to bring us this story.
The ironic humor, even if unintended, of one now entering sign on the Mohawk Trail is never lost on me. The location, where the scenery couldn't be any more the antithesis of that found in the state of Florida, is actually a real turning point when heading west on the trail. Everything that looked like mountains in the distance earlier in the drive has now become the surroundings. The roadside terrain takes on a new ruggedness, and the weather can change on a dime, like the snow that we had when we drove through on Earth Day in late April. Here, it's a place where the cold river hugs the town line of Savoy and Florida, with contributions from Hillside Falls and Black Brook. But in all of my westbound travels out this way, I had never taken the hard left onto Black Brook Road, until today. We were heading into the hills of Savoy in search of the 5-star rated Cascades known as Tannery Falls. Getting there, that may be a bit of an adventure.
For me, these journeys can be a way of sort of making up for lost time. Back when I was in school, I never made it out to places like this because I was too busy doing college things. Now, all these years later, I get to visit some of the most exquisite spots in nature, and it falls under the heading of work.
First order of business, make sure the shoelaces are tight and not dangling before venturing out into potentially muddy terrain. The trail starts off with a pretty wide berth, which is a nice touch for hikers who may feel a little claustrophobic under the tree line. But it only stays this way for about a third of the trek. We were traveling on what is known as the 𝗪𝗂𝗪 Trail, named for the Civilian Conservation Corps who created it back in the 1930s. This mile-long path is kind of a roundabout way of getting to the actual falls, but there's plenty of scenery to take in. And not only that, but being in the great outdoors can be one way to get a mental health checkup. Research into what's being called ecotherapy has shown that doing activities outdoors in nature can help with mild to moderate depression. Living in the city, I can be prone to feelings of heightened anxiety myself, but I gain a new perspective when I look down at puddles like these and see a whole other world teeming with life, literally under my feet. A couple of things to keep in mind when taking the 𝗪𝗂𝗪 Trail to the falls. The starting point is essentially the summit, so the way there is down. It's like hiking a mountain in reverse. Secondly, this is the Savoy Mountain State Forest, not just some backyard woods. It's pretty easy to get turned upside down here, so having food, water, a compass, and a memory for landmarks is recommended. Third, this trail only leads to the road that the falls are on. The parking area is still about a quarter mile away from here. So for those who just want to get there, Tannery Road is less than a mile up Black Brook Road from where we started on the 𝗪𝗂𝗪 Trail. From here, it's onward and downward. From the parking area, there's no time wasted on delivering the audio-visual experience. The water flowing in from Ross Brook on one side and Parker Brook on the other adds a nice surround sound element. Anyone on the Parker Brook path not distracted by the sights and sounds of the rushing rapids may notice what appears to be some kind of foundation. This is all that remains of the tannery that once stood here over a century ago. But just like the waterfalls that we're chasing, this adventure continues on in a downward trajectory. The walkway along Ross Brook is very well kept, and the stairs leading to the base of the falls are user-friendly, so long as the user takes advantage of the handrail. Now on to the fireworks. Taking the right off the stairs, we can see the 60-foot angular drop of Parker Brook Falls as it twists and turns through the narrow gorge of moss-covered stone. If this were the 4th of July, though, these falls would be the build-up to the grand finale. This, in all of its 80 feet of cascading waterfall glory, is Tannery Falls, with nearly half of the upper falls being a sheet of white water that skates over flat-faced stone. The lower half is a bit more of a bumpy ride, bouncing over countless rock formations before eventually collecting in this pool at the base. It's been said that to everything there is a season, and such is the case with waterfalls. That season is springtime, and having seen it myself up close and personal, I too would give it the 5-star review that so many before me have. But while I was trudging through the woods, nearly getting myself lost on more than one occasion, one phrase kept running through my mind. It's not the destination, it's the journey. And now that I've made it here, I say, who says that journey ever has to end?
Every fall, this region looks forward to one of the area's most anticipated fairs, the Eastern States Exposition, better known as the Big E. However, last year, for the first time since World War II, the fair, like many other events, was canceled due to the pandemic. I spoke with Eugene Cassidy, president and CEO of the Eastern States Exposition, to hear how difficult it was to come to that decision, how the exposition has managed to reinvent itself during the past year, and what the future holds for the Big E.
It had been 75 years since we canceled the last time. But during the war effort, everybody was all hands on deck, and so people understood that. Here, we didn't fully understand what the pandemic was going to mean for the world, really. What most people probably don't realize is the economic impact of the Eastern States Exposition is over $681 million. And there's a lot of livelihoods at stake. So, while there's the livelihoods of the few of us that work here, in a normal time, we only have about 30 full-time employees, although we're down quite a bit from that now. But there's thousands of people that are in that $681 million. So that complicated the cancellation because we knew that people needed us in order for them to make ends meet. And it was a very difficult decision to make. While at the same time, we were aware that if we had a fair, we could have been putting people in harm's way at health risk as well.
The exposition hosts over 100 events throughout the year that range from trade shows to agricultural and livestock competitions and entertainment events, all which have been affected by this pandemic. So how have you managed to reinvent yourselves in order to stay afloat during these difficult times?
We're used to having events on very large scales. We deal with large volumes of people. But it's also important for us to kind of keep the name Eastern States Exposition in the spotlight. And so we did that by having food drive-through. We opened recently with our concessions partner, the West Springfield Drive-In for drive-in movies, very successful. We had the Victory Cheese Garden here, cheese market, which is sort of a throwback to the Second World War days. We needed to provide a platform for New England agriculture to be able to distribute their product. A lot of this stuff generated no income to the Eastern States, but it kept us in the public eye. And getting through the pandemic has been extraordinarily difficult. And if we failed, filling that void of $681 million for our region, I'm not sure anybody could ever backfill that void.
Now, this April, it was announced that the Big E would become a mass vaccination site, which is second in the region after the site at the Eastfield Mall in Springfield. Why were the fairgrounds chosen as a mass vaccination site, and how does it feel to offer this service to the residents?
I would have liked to have had the vaccination site opened in January. but we were unable to convince the state that this was the best place for it, in spite of the fact that we were the second largest coronavirus testing site. So, it feels good to be able to deliver the solution. And if it weren't for Mayor 𝗍𝗏𝗃, the mayor of West Springfield, Mayor 𝗚𝗏𝗃 from Agawam, Mayor Humison from Westfield, those three gentlemen, Mayor Will 𝗍𝗏𝗃, the chief among them, played a powerful role for this region, and the region owes them all a debt of gratitude for sure.
The 𝗏𝗄𝗄 has been part of this region for over a century, and the fair is one of the most popular events that we see in this region. In 2019, when the fair was last held, it saw over 1.6 million visitors. With Massachusetts entering phase 4 of its reopening and loosening restrictions, are you hopeful that the fair can make a comeback this year?
We are very optimistic. The governor has indicated that August 1st, the mandates would be removed. We know that we're in a very big public environment, mass gathering space. Some people are never going to return to mass gatherings, and that's up to their discretion, of course. But we'd like to see, the American way of life be celebrated again at the 𝗏𝗄𝗄, to be sure.
That does it for Connecting Point for May 14th, 2021. Remember, you can always find the stories that you saw tonight, as well as exclusive features, digital-only content, and more online anytime at nepm.org/connectingpoint. And please join us again next Friday night at 6 right here on New England Public Media for more stories of the creativity, culture, and community that makes us Western New England. I'm 𝗖𝗍𝗲𝘄𝗏𝘀 𝗏𝗏. Be safe and have a good night.
Support for Connecting Point is provided by our contributing viewers.
An unruly white mob destroyed part of this city, which was the black community.
Tulsa and the state of Oklahoma have never made amends for that.
If we can give them